Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you with us today in the third of our Behind the Creative Process series. And today we're delighted to have with us Stephanie Brody Lederman, who I will introduce in a couple of minutes after some brief housekeeping comments. I'm Beth Tractenberg, a partner at Steptoe in the New York office, and I'm delighted to welcome you. Just for your information as to how the webinar will work, all of the windows in front of you can be adjusted for size and location for your viewing ease. If you want to take a quick minute, you can use your cursor to move them or make them larger, whatever is easiest for you. Please don't hesitate to reach out using the help and question and answer chat feature if you need any assistance. And finally, for you to know, for the duration of the presentation, all viewers will be in listen-only mode. However, we do encourage you to ask questions throughout the program. Click in the field, type your question, and hit submit. Your question won't be seen by other attendees and will remain anonymous, and we will get to that if we can. So with those housekeeping details behind us, I'd like to introduce you to our guest, Stephanie Brody Lederman, and tell you a bit about her. Stephanie is a New York-based painter, book artist, and sculptor. She is someone who uses mixed media in her art, where she combines words and visual imagery for some of her art, and we're going to be speaking a lot about that. Her works have been included in many important museum exhibitions and are in permanent collections of corporations, museums, and individuals in the United States and also outside of the United States. Her artwork has been featured on the covers of magazines, including the Paris Review. We're going to talk about that a bit during our discussion. And her works are in the permanent collections of Shakespeare and Company in Paris, and also in the permanent collections of two Pulitzer Prize winning writers, one of whom is Edward Albee. Well, I could go on and on about all of your awards and fellowships, but instead I would just like to introduce you. So welcome, Stephanie. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
So to get started, I want to say that I am very familiar with your art, and I'm very lucky enough to have many of your pieces in my own collection, and this is a great opportunity for me to get to know more about your art, as well as for our participants to get to know more about your art. And I'd like to start by asking you, how did you know that you were an artist? What did you do to further your interest and skills? And so that's our introduction to your creative process.
Well, I always knew I was an artist. I think it started when I was 3 years old, and my mother used to spend a lot of time at my grandmother and grandfather's house in the Bronx, and their apartment. And they would sit me down in the kitchen and tear up a brown paper bag and sharpen a pencil with a butcher knife in the kitchen sink. And I would go on and on making drawings with total abandon and delight. When I started kindergarten, I was immediately known as the class artist. So I guess all that practice on the brown paper bags turned out to be beneficial.
I guess it did.
I went to the High School of Music and Art for high school in New York. And then I went off. I just always knew I was an artist. I went off to the University of Michigan to their School of Architecture and Design. And I was not in the architecture aspect of it, but the design part. And after 2 years, I ended up at Finch College because I met my true love and wanted to be in New York with him. And I got a very good education my last 2 years studying art. When my children were little, we moved to Long Island, and I went to CW Post College and got my master's degree in painting. And from then on, I had a wonderful, wonderful thesis advisor who took me very, very seriously and said, "You're an artist," which I had heard before, but somehow coming from him, it really meant a lot. And I immediately took that on and rented a truck and drove my paintings down to Soho and showed my work to different gallery dealers. I was not at all intimidated because I didn't know any better. And
Well,
one gallery,
that's a benefit.
it is.
So I'd like to delve a little bit more into your actual technique and how the technique developed to where you are today. I know that you use mostly oil paint and acrylics, and a lot of your art is not what you would call purely representational. You paint a dog, and we're going to get to that shortly. We'll see some of your dog works, and they don't necessarily look like a photograph of a dog. And I know we've talked about this in preparing for this session. It's probably every artist's least favorite question, but you're very gracious about it. Were you trained to paint representationally, and then how did you move away from that? Well, I figured you. I actually knew that because we discussed it already, but I think it's a really interesting question.
Yes. But somehow, when I wanted to paint something that was truly the essence of what I was painting, I didn't want it to look generic, and I didn't want it to look like a photograph, although I love photographs. I wanted it to have the mark of the hand, the fact that a human being did it. Sort of like the caves in France that have the mark of the hand. So I started to get my feelings about things into the essence of the drawing. And if I thought the dog had really big ears, I made big ears, bigger than big. And people started liking what I was doing and telling me their dog looked just like that. So
even though it didn't look just like a dog.
No, but it looked like their dog in their heart.
That is a beautiful way to put it. We have a photograph you took of a dog that you used as the basis for some very, well, I think they're very sweet because I love dogs. Other people might describe them differently, but a series that you have of dogs, and I just love these dogs' faces. So I really like the idea that you translated from the photograph of the dog lying on a chaise lounge to these dogs' faces with some words underneath the dogs. So I think people will enjoy looking at the difference between the photograph and your representations of the dogs, which have an enormous amount of personality.
Yes. One of my favorites is taking Luigi to the vet. And it's about a dog that just doesn't want to go into his carrier case and go to the vet because he's been there before and it was no fun. And I realized as I was doing it that it really spoke to most of us who dislike going to the doctor. And it became more universal than doggy. It became human. And that's how it touched people. That's one piece that I can't sell because I don't want to. I feel very close to it.
Okay. You were talking about going to the vet and it becoming human, and then I got distracted because you disappeared.
Oh, okay. Well, what I realized was that I couldn't sell it because I loved it too much, because it spoke to feelings that were close to myself, close to me, and the people that I love. So, and then I found out that people that I didn't know and certainly, didn't love, felt that I had done the work about them. And there it was dog taking Luigi to the vet.
Well, I guess that's one of the beautiful things about art. People see what they want to see in it and they personalize it. Um, I think
Oh,
now's a great,
the way I got the name Luigi, Beth, was
yes.
I was in a communal art space, and there was a telephone in the center hall. This was in Long Island City. And somebody left a message and said, if anyone calls for Hester, tell them she's taking Louise to the vet. And I just saw the poetry in that. That became a title. So you got to watch out what you say I'm around, because
Well, okay. Forewarned is forearmed, I guess. I'll
Okay,
keep that in mind.
be careful, Beth.
Okay. Well, people are probably wondering where you are right now because it's sort of an unusual looking place. You're sitting on a nice, comfortable looking couch, but we can see that there's a lot behind you. And so one of our exciting parts of our presentation today is that you're in your studio. So you're going to give us a tour of your studio, which I'm really looking forward to, and I'm sure people will really enjoy because this is a real workspace.
Right. This
So
is a factory where it's made.
Yeah.
And it's a little more cluttered than usual because I took out paintings so I could show them to you easily. But it's never pristine. I'm not a photorealist. I'm not a photorealist in my life or in the paintings that I do. I like the mark of the hand, as I said, and I like the gesture that makes us delightfully human. So would you like me to take you around?
I would, thank you. And I know we're going to also get to see your garden, which is
Have a little
favorite
garden.
place for you and an inspiration.
Right. It is for inspiration and also a glass of wine.
Oh, well, so much the better.
This is my painting wall. I could have painted it white before this taping took place and made it look pristine, but that's not the way work gets done.
Right.
On the wall, painting that seems to be to sum up what my art is about. It says, some people love poetry. And the everyday, the ordinary is poetic for me. This little canary or yellow bird sitting on a cherry tree branch made me say, I'm not bird watching. The bird is watching. So I have bird watching here. And then I have still life, because I love double entendres, and I'm dealing with both the fact that it's my still life, it's not a cup of flowers with a vase, but rather it's life that's awfully still at this particular moment.
Well,
And also still, as in yet.
One of the questions I always have about your art, which I think is one of the things that makes it so interesting, is that in a lot of your art, you combine an image with words. So are you always telling a story when you start painting, or do you sometimes just visualize what the painting's going to look like and then the words come to you? How does that happen?
Both. Sometimes I have a story to tell, but that's more unusual. Usually it's almost like birthing a child. I start the painting, and then the painting tells me what it's about. And all of a sudden I think, I need a bird here. And then when the bird is there, I think, this is poetic. So one thing leads to another to another.
You had said a very interesting Duchamp quote about your process, which I loved. And if you remember that from our preparation and can share that, that would be great.
Yes, Duchamp said, the viewer completes the work. And I love that. I love seeing a viewer look at my work and say, I never told you my story. Because I think, and this is another quote from Tennessee Williams, the great magic trick in life is making art out of the ordinary. And that's what I try to do. I try to get the universal art experience out of very ordinary things that for me are quite extraordinary when I look at them carefully and think about them.
And so this is where you actually paint your paintings. So I guess all of the paint behind you comes from paintings of different sizes. And I see that there are drips of paint coming down the wall, which is also a theme of your painting. Can you tell us how you use the drips on your actual paintings as part of the paintings?
The drips are both a metaphor for the way we don't know how things are going to end up, and life just kind of meanders and drips in directions that we didn't expect or even expected. And the drip also becomes a graphic thing where it gives the work what I call incident, something to look at and activate the surface.
Do you have any paintings nearby that have the drips? I guess the one that's on the wall has them a bit, but some of them are more obvious.
Okay, here's a really drippy painting.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not going to hang it up, but I will take this guy off so it's not distracting. Can you see it?
Yes, perfect. Oh, I love that one.
This is called A Garden Party. And there is a cherry tree, but I didn't write cherry. I love to use French and English expressions. I love to see the poetry in words themselves. So instead of writing cherry tree, I wrote cherie tree, CHER, which is boyfriend, or, well, with an I, it's a boyfriend. With an E, it's a girlfriend. And then, because the piece started to get into some sort of French New Wave movie to me, almost like Dancing with Truffaut, I made the cherie tree a lark, playing again with words. It was a lark. And then, well, my father used to love to use fancy words in everyday speech. When I would ask him where my mother was, he'd say she's out gallivanting. And he also used the phrase cavort. Don't cavort too much.
That's a word you don't hear often enough, cavort.
These are words you don't hear, and I love them. So I wrote cavort here and then crossed them out so that one gets the feeling that one has found upon this word as opposed to it bunging you in the head. And then right on the corner, I did a little visual pun, and I wrote around the corner, and I wrote around the corner, around the corner.
I see. But I want to also come back to something you use the French word chérie, and I know that Paris has been a huge inspiration for you. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's meant to you?
We have an apartment in Paris, and we're there about 4 times a year. And Paris to me is just symbolic of the romance of life. And by that I don't mean boy, girl, boy, boy, girl, girl thing. I mean romance as in the smell of chestnuts in the street, the oysters being shucked on a stand by the sidewalk, just the poetry and romance of everyday life in Paris, the odors, the people. Yes, the people. I love them.
Well, I know that you have one of your works, as I mentioned, in the permanent collection of Shakespeare and Company, and you've also had one of your works on the cover of the Paris Review and also on L'Oeil, another French magazine. How did all that come about?
Oh, that was really one of those gifts that if there's a goddess up in heaven, she gave it to me. I wrote to the Paris Review, and I said, I'm an artist. Here is some work I do. And I sent them some images, just cold. And I would say after less than a week, I got a letter back. It was an email, and it said, "We love your work. We want to put it on the cover."
Wow.
So it was like, "Wee, fantastique!" And this is the cover of the Paris. Whoops! This is the cover of the Paris Review, and it's called "My Swell Buena Vista."
And
And
what's the meaning, if you have any meaning behind that? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
well, there was a snowman. It was the winter issue. There was a snowman, and there is a big, like, fan lantern, and another lantern that's being held. And somehow, when I drew the second lantern, I got the feeling I was doing a little bit of dirty pictures, and I thought, I can't get away with that. And it was just really the hook on the lantern, but they loved it. What can I say? I think it's fun to play. And this look is this is my work, and this is a German artist's work. Whoops. Are you okay?
Don't want to lose the cinematographer there, Stephanie.
I don't want to lose him.
I'm trying to keep.
And this is me. And I took an old book and I just made it. I made it mine. I put glitter on it. I bought birds in the millinery section of Manhattan, where they have birds that they put on hats, and they have all kinds of buttons. And I like stores like that. I love 99-cent stores. I get a lot of things for my work from them.
Well, I know that some of your work is mixed media, where you actually attach items to the paper or the canvas, which is really interesting. I don't know if you have any of that in the studio.
I have some around over here, and we're heading towards the garden, so we're going in the right direction. Over here is a little piece called Hot Diggity, Dog Diggity, and I have a little hot dog on the table that I painted on there. And once the work is framed, it has an entirely different look. I mean, it looks much more pristine. Like this piece is called Too Many Irons in the Fire. And I use those little plastic irons that I stuck to it. So the work looks very, very different once it's framed. Yes. It gives it a And actually, these frames came from IKEA, and 2 of them came damaged. And this one had a big crack over here. So I decided to put a die over here and use glitter, because there's an artist whose name is Pat Lash, whose father was a conditor. A conditor is a person who decorates cakes. And he taught her when she was growing up, if you make a mistake, put a rose on it. And I love that.
That is good. I'll have to remember that.
So now we're heading, these paintings are supposed to be in a show in Paris at, again, it's literary. It's the Red Barrel bookstore, and it's an English bookstore. And she has pillars, and she thinks the work is very literary. And the plague came, and we couldn't get the work over there. But ultimately, it's going to happen. I always have faith that things happen, and if they don't, something better will, or something worse. But that's all.
I'm amazed at how prolific you are. How many works do you think you create, say, in a month? I'm sure it must vary, but
I never thought about it.
Okay. I'm just looking around your studio and thinking, how many years worth of works are these?
Well, a couple of days ago, I turned 81, and I've been making art since I was, let's see, really seriously making art to show since I was about 26. So here it is. It's all here. But lately I've been selling a lot, which
Hmm.
is I like that.
That's great.
Yeah. So there are these steps to go outside to the garden, and I will show you the garden. Let's go out here. Oops, sun. Wow.
Oh, beautiful. That's so
Yes,
nice.
it's really nice. It's very urban, and I can sit here or sit more in the shade there. And then all of these people who I don't know are over there, and they might know me better than I think, but I don't.
They might. That's true.
So let's go back.
Okay, and we have some questions from viewers that I want to
Oh,
share
cool.
with you. And we'll get through
Cool.
as many as we have time.
Okay. Getting back into the main area.
Okay. That's a beautiful space. You're lucky to have
Oh,
such a large space.
full now. It's heaven. And then I've got this gorgeous tree that's having a hard time with hurricane stuff going on, but it's right at my window. So here I am in the middle of Manhattan, and I've got tree branches that are trying to come in.
Oh, that is very lucky, and we'll just hope they don't actually make it in. So, um, so let me ask you some of the questions that we've gotten. Um, Someone asked, where does your inspiration for a new piece start? Which is a little similar to what we've been talking about, but I think expands upon it. For example, does your inspiration start with words, with external events?
Well, I'll tell you something that happened very recently. Because of the plague, I have not been going out that much, but I do essential marketing. And I was on the way to the grocery store and saw this amazing antique car that was robin's egg blue with sort of a chartreuse green shawl it was a convertible over the front seat. And I thought, this is what I'm missing by being in. I'm not getting this visual stimulus that I get when I'm out in the street.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make a painting using robin's egg blue with chartreuse. So that's one way it starts. Another way it starts is I hate empty canvases. I hate a white canvas. So what I usually do is I take any color of my acrylic and I just cover it. Some of it drips. And then that starts to suggest something. And it's not empty anymore. And I run with it. And I put one color on top of another, and I try to coax out some sort of an image or some sort of a design. And sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. But I never give up, because some of the best work comes from mistakes that are painted over.
Hmm. And I know you have certain themes, which may be themes that are personal to you, but then other people pick up on those themes. For example, I have one of your works, which I know you've said you think is one of your best works, which is The Night the War Ended. And that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I guess you take events in your life sometimes and you make that into art.
Well, one of my earliest memories is the night the war ended, World War II. And my mother and I were on vacation up in New Hampshire. And when they heard the war was over and we were all on the beach, everybody ran around and kissed everyone on the lips. And I remember that because my mother never let me kiss anyone on the lips, and she was out of control. Everyone was So that was the night the war ended. And then a friend of mine saw the piece and said, I've got to have it. And I said, why? And she said, because that's when I stopped fighting with my husband.
So yeah, that goes back to the art is what the viewer brings to it.
Exactly.
Are there any particular artists that you have found have been real inspirations to you or have maybe made you think about going in different directions than you already have been?
I like Gerhard Richter. I love the way he smears his paint. I love Matisse for his colors. And then for the sensibility of getting emotion into the image, I don't think anyone does it better than Kiki Smith. I just love her.
Interesting. I wish we had some of their works to show, but people can go look at their works themselves if they're not familiar with them.
Yeah.
Someone else has asked, I see a lot of nature themes in your work. Will you talk a little bit about that influence?
Nature things, yes,
Themes,
I love
nature
trees,
themes.
but
Yeah.
I also in here are all the artist books that I made. Like these are 2 books that I made into a napkin holder, and here it's called the napkin holder, and on the other side
How
it's in
would it be
French,
called?
the serviette holder,
Ah,
and then it's volume 1 and volume 2. Help yourself. Take one. What else do I do? Oh, here's a little piece of sculpture, and this is, what did I call it? Sometimes I forget. Oh, this is Birdland, and
oh,
it's like these
Birdland.
houses. Yeah, these apartment houses.
Is there
that I
any
remember.
any
Yeah,
jazz
well,
that
you could
comes
think of
with
jazz
this?
and whatever,
Yeah.
and it's about the apartment houses that I remember in the Bronx. The brick apartment houses, very upstanding, and then contrasting it with the little suburban house or the birdhouse, and the birds not caring.
Well, there are a lot of different layers in your work, which is one of the things I love about it because you can look at it and the words will mean one thing and then the visual will mean something else. And then when you combine the words with the visual, maybe it means yet another thing.
I think so. I think it's sort of like I studied geology, igneous rock, when both the sand and the heat come together and they form a different compound. This book I want to show you, this book I did after September 11th, and it was called Be Kind. And inside it was it said communicator, and it was an old alarm box. And the box was in disarray. So, and then it says in memory. So things do come. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do about this COVID thing, but right now I've been doing flowers and trees and making my own world in this studio.
Well, that's one way to be out in the world, even when you can't be, and to create a more pleasant reality, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Beth, you wanted to see the dogs?
Oh, yes. You have dogs right
I
there?
have dogs right here, yeah. First of all, and I'll put this piece over here, and I think you can see it. This is a Bronx series, and it was a movie theater called, I think you're supposed to pronounce it Lowe's Paradise Theater, but in the Bronx they pronounce it Loewy's. So it was Loewy's Paradise Theater, and it had stars and all over the ceiling. It was like a planetarium, and I used to sit there and wonder if I was really under the stars, except it said exit over the door, and there was a little clock. So I took Skippy, who was my alter ego, and here's another Skippy. He couldn't help himself.
Was Skippy actually a dog that you had, or was
he was a dog that my grandmother had. He belonged to my father. And my father left it with my grandmother because my mother wasn't crazy about dogs. So we used to visit Skippy, and Skippy and I were buds. So there's Skippy, and it's a charmed life. And believe it or not, the park that they lived in, that they lived across the street from, was called Mount Eden Park, which I think, talk about poetry, Mount Eden Park. It's so poetic. Now here's another dog. I'll take it over here.
Okay.
This dog, Skippy, he's even on a bath mat that has his initial, S for Skippy. And I remember a row
lucky dog.
Yes, he's been immortalized. I remember a row of flamingo decals on the wall above the bathroom tiles. And we had one relative who was very, very, flamboyant. And she lived, believe it or not, on Charlotte Street in the Bronx, which had become ultimately famous for being a rundown slum that was resurrected. But she had a bathroom with aquamarine walls over white tile and then decals of flamingos. I wanted to live there. I just thought that was so cool. So that's another dog. And the last dog I'll show you is this one that I just did. And this is Le Wolf. Because I heard there's a restaurant in Paris that is called Le Wolf. And I just liked it so much. And it says, for the sake of delight. And I also put it together with the other. They were in my studio, and they were far apart, and they just merged. They became friends. And I like the idea that the dog looks like he's coming from somewhere. I like the trompe-l'oeil act of the dog.
So you actually put two separate paintings together and made them one?
Yes, my cinematographer did it.
Oh, your cinematographer is multi-talented.
He is. So there it is.
Unfortunately, we only have time for one more question. This time has just flown by. This has been great. So the last question that we have time for is, what is your favorite place that you've shown your work and why? For example, maybe someplace unique or different than the standard gallery.
Shakespeare and Company.
I thought you were going to say that.
Store in Paris. It's where James Joyce was, where all of the French 30s and 40s writers were, 30s, 40s, there was a war. And I had a similar experience with Shakespeare and Company as I did with the Paris Review. I sent them a picture of a painting that I did that I had taken a photograph of. They have a blackboard outside, and I had taken a photograph of the saying on the blackboard that the owner, George Whitman, wrote. And I incorporated it into the painting. I found their website. I sent it to them, and they said, how much? It is now on permanent exhibition on the second floor. There's a balcony in Shakespeare and Company. Shakespeare and Company is always mobbed. And on the second floor, there it is, installed forever, they told me.
Wow.
So
that's wonderful.
That getting into Rayo's restaurant are the two most famous things I've ever done.
Well,
I told them my friend was dying, and she said if she got better, she wanted to go to Rayo's, which was the truth. And they said, can you come in tomorrow?
Oh.
So we all came in together. This must have been about 15 years ago.
Well, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this, Stephanie. And to your cinematographer, Gerald, thank you so much too.